Welcome, lovely listeners. It's that time, folks, to have a lovely cup of tea in your hands and to ignore your responsibilities. Temporarily. If you have a busy day ahead of you, distract yourself with something weird and creepy. And if your day is ending, congratulations. You can sign off with a creepy story. Today, listeners, we have a Nosleep. I love my Nosleep stories. Titled, My Son Won't Take Off His Halloween Costume. And your fantastic author for this episode is IamHowardMoxley. Very cool name. So strap yourself in, but not too tight. Let your skin breathe, as it were, and get ready for something creepy. Being poor is tough, but it hits especially hard during the holidays. Halloween is the first reminder that you don't have the disposable income for your kid's happiness. I took Austin down to a local thrift store that we visited frequently. They had a rack of reject costumes from supermarkets, a few cheap latex masks, corny novelty party hats, and one very well made green and yellow belly dragon costume that looked like it could fit Austin and Austin only, sitting alone next to a golf bag full of hockey sticks. It was painstakingly detailed. It had scales that actually shimmered, interlocked in tiny emerald shields, each one with their own special symbol. Hard like crystal, lighter than glass, or even plastic. It was cute enough to make adults smile, and remarkable enough to finally make my poor son the envy of all the rich kids at his school. My son jumped into it without waiting. I appreciated the workmanship on the rubber-soled feet. Individual fingers with claws and lifelike tail and jaw. No stitches, no tag. Custom, handmade. Austin took the head off the dragon and slid it over his own, his bright smile eclipsed by the black mesh inside the dragon's open mouth. He begged me to get it. It wasn't cheap, at least for us. But, well, worth it for Austin. Austin wore the costume all day from then on. That was the 27th, when he went to his first friend's costume party of many. He was the hit of every one, so it was no wonder why he loved the dragon so much that he wanted to sleep in it. Seeing as how it was one giant plush and armored sleeping bag, we agreed. It seemed like we kinda had to. The kid did all his chores and homework in that costume, as if he was trying to buy a favor with us before he asked if he could keep the costume on. We said yes. Even at school he could wear it, until Halloween. Austin's school is very open-minded. The students loved the costume as much as everybody else. Even the teacher was fine with letting Austin keep it on during school hours. It was the first week that Austin the Dragon didn't get into trouble. Austin even got a rare A on his spelling test during the week before Halloween. He ate his veggies and brushed his teeth through a slot in the mesh that was hard to see at times, and it sounded like he was showering every night without you needing to tell him to. Why not let the kid have some fun? Austin's last Halloween is my bet for the best Halloween nights any kid has ever had. Every house was its own little amusement park with its treats and decorations. Almost all of them for Austin the Dragon, a legend that every kid spread at school. It seemed that every adult played along as knights or maidens or queens, and even some of the other kids copied his costume, leading a band of dragons to terrorize the neighborhoods looking for chocolate late in the weekday nights. What we feared would happen came true on the 1st of November. Austin refused to get out of the costume. He was never a shrieker or kicker before, but he was when my wife or I tried to unzip the back or reach for the head of the dragon. After an hour of arguing and tears, we finally caved and sent our kid out to school looking like a fool. When my wife called me that afternoon, saying it was the school and that it was an emergency, all I could imagine was a group of bullies beating up my son in his costume. I rushed all the way to the school's nurse's room where I saw my son on his stomach, laying on the reclined bed still in the dragon. The nurse told us that a kickball had flown over the fence and bounced off a truck's bumper, launching the ball onto a lamppost and then to the back of my son's head as he was walking out of lunch. A strange event, a stroke of bad luck, path of the storm and all that.
The nurse did have good news. She said the helmet inside the costume may have saved his life, as she could still feel a pulse even with the costume on. Austin was unconscious and may have been hemorrhaging. We needed to get it off him.
The helmet was stuck tight, so were the side of the bottom zippers. The nurse had to ask a custodian for a pair of pliers to get a better grip on the zipper tabs. The nurse clamped onto it and tugged. My wife helped her.
I should have left it alone, but I helped the two of them. With all three of us straining,
The zipper peeled down slowly like an embedded knife drawing through a torso with a sound that reminded me of wet wood splitting. The space above the zipper split open to a deep crimson gash flashing bones, muscles,
and organs.
My wife screamed as the nurse yanked up the zipper up alone, closing the oozing, bleeding zippers as best she could as we picked him up. We followed our son in the facility school van emergency ambulance to the nearest ER and waited until dark. Until 2 women and 2 men entered our son's ER wearing medical scrubs that were bright white while the others wore powder green. They each carried an official kind of walk, kind of a march with matching bright blue-soled nurses' shoes. They looked odd, like actors in a play. But as out of place as they seemed, this new crew gave my wife and I new hope. 10 minutes later, 2 of them walked out, one carrying the costume of the dragon, the other, the head. One said to the other, "Just a little more time and his meal would have been done." Still, I can't believe they let one of us get all the way to a thrift store. As they walked off down the hall, ignoring us, my wife followed them while I waited by the door for the other 2. When the 3 of them left, a man exited the ER in a hurry. The last woman spoke in a strange accent to the man that left, like she learnt English from a speech bot. "You can't do that here." The man's voice was quick and sleek. "Rules don't apply here, man-eater. This is just the cattle pen." I physically stopped the man with my arm. His brown eyes ruffled and shot down at me in indignant fury as I asked, "Do you know anything about my son, Austin?" "Why would I know anything about your son?" The doctor wore one of those metal reflective discs on his head and a stethoscope that belonged on a TV set. His mask hid everything but those angry eyes. He smelled of gasoline made out of limes. I asked him what he was doing in the ER with that group and who he was. "Do you think I wear this mask to advertise who I am?" He broke the contact with my hand and walked out of sight. I was so pissed. I almost followed him before my wife, running, came back to me breathless. She said those doctors stole the costume by walking out of the hospital, getting into a parked car and driving away. We came back to ER and found the group standing outside waiting for us. The doctor tried to explain that they didn't know what to do, as the costume appeared to be fused to Austin's skin, and no matter where they cut into Austin. Nobody knew who the group of strange 4 were or how they got the costume off. My wife and I pushed our way in past the barricade of bodies to see the half-digested bloody mess from hell all over the operating table and room. In the mess was Austin's watch, pickled and shriveled, like it had been sitting in his stomach for nearly a week. I ran from the ER so quickly that my shoes slipped off halfway through the sprint. The first thing my eyes landed on was the blue bathroom symbol, and I bolted there to throw up and have my breakdown. The men's room's door was propped open, and I had no shoes left to make a sound. That's why the arrogant doctor who blew past me didn't stop pissing. He didn't hear me or see me. He was standing at one of the toilet stalls with his bright blue-soled shoes at one of the stalls, standing half in and out between an open door, the front of his head out of view. I saw what looked like his deflated face and neck resting on his shoulders, like a coat hood not in use. He then grabbed his own face with fake lips and empty eye holes and pulled it out of view into the stall as he put it on. I heard what might have been a zipper closing up,
and I swore I saw his body jerk up a bit, like he just noticed I was standing there, watching everything. I bolted out, back to the arms of my crying wife. We called the staff, and we waited for the man in the men's room to exit. When no one did, we searched the place and found nothing but the toilet he was using, filled with blood and half-digested chunks of bone. Oh yeah, I love these stories. They remind me of the old Goosebump stories, or Tales from the Crypt episodes. A big thank you to IamHowardMoxley. Be sure to see more of their work in the description in this episode. So I've got to ask, what would you have done in this situation for your child? Would you have done the same thing? Where would you go? Or what would be your first point of call to get your child out of that costume? For me, I'd be back at the store I got it from and figure out where the hell it came from. Then, go from there. This episode also reminds me of a really neat film called Clown. Anyone else seen that one? If you want a visual representation of what is happening here in this story, check it out. Not for the squeamish, okay? It can be pretty intense. And before I sign off, if you enjoyed this episode and have some time on whichever platform you're on, YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, my goodness, there's so many platforms. Whichever one that you're on, a subscribe or review goes a long way. It's supporters and listeners like you that keep this channel's blood pumping and gets authors out there and into the minds of people around the world. It's a wonderful thing. And lastly, thank you, listener. That's right, I'm talking straight to you. The fact that you're listening alone is helping this channel grow, and I'm very grateful. And on that note, lovely people, it's that time. This is the place where stories live, and you telltellers come to listen. Enjoy your day or night, and join me every weekday for our creepy tradition. And as always, till next time.